everybody. Hi, Scarlett. Hi, guys. If you don't know me by now, I've said my name like 12 times today, but my name's Cody, and I'm the youth pastor here, and it's good to get to know you guys. Feel free to sit where you're sitting. It's great.
Is there going to be a fake one this time?
Is there going to be a fake one?
Is there going to be another clone?
Another clone, like fake Cody? Like not real me? No. I've been on, for those who don't know the joke, it's me, Cody, here. I've been on paternity leave in the last couple weeks, so I haven't been around. And Dylan's been in the videos in the other classes. But in here, we're going to be teaching it in person. So no videos, just my smiling face and whatever happens there. If you haven't gotten food and you're like, I'm kind of hungry, there are chips over there. There's drinks in the fridge, like, Capri Sun, woohoo, and LaCroix, because those two things go really well together. If you do not have talk notes in front of you, you can raise your hand and they can be given to you, and we have connection cards. I'm going to go over some basic things about what's coming up this week. We have every single Tuesday night here at Alive Church, the one night is what we call it, and it's one night, not two night. Shush your face. It is not two night, it is one night. One night a week where we get together. This week we are doing what we call a breakout session, where we are learning from our other pastors, Pastor Steve, about why we trust the Bible, or why we think it's a legit thing. It's a continuation of a talk that he did back in November. So if you caught that one, you're like, I want the tail end of it, that's awesome. If you didn't catch that one, you can always go to our YouTube channel and watch it again if you are interested in catching up. But every single Tuesday night, we have something going on here, whether it's small groups, which it usually is, or it's the breakout session. Next month, we're going to be doing a question and response night. So basically, we're going to be gathering questions for the next month or so, and we'll be answering them to the best of our ability. And those questions, obviously, are typically around faith, Jesus, God, what he says about all these different things. So get those questions. We know you have them. It's not like I don't have any questions, because if you don't have questions, you're fooling yourself, because you're all knowing. Oh, interesting. I would like to get to know more about how your brain works, Joseph, because that's pretty cool. But other than that, breakout sessions are once a month, and we have Tuesday night small groups every single week. Easter is coming up. A lot of things coming up. School year is coming to a close. Summer camp is going to be coming up. We'll give you more information about that. I would like to say Tuesday. Maybe we'll have an answer for you Tuesday, actually. Maybe that'd be a really good announcement to be able to do that day. But what's that? I have answers for you. So we're going to get started today with a brand new series. But before we do, I think that it might be helpful to just get the giggles out, to get people moving around a little bit. So everybody stand up. Everybody stand up. This is a basketball. It's a game called Everybody Stand Up. Everybody stand up and move out to the corners of the room really quick. We're going to get moving a little bit. All right. Yep. All right. This is a game I like to call Jeopardy. The game is you ask a question and you throw the ball. If you answer the question, if you stutter at all, you're out. You do not answer or respond to the question. The questions can be whatever question you want it is. It cannot be the same question that has already been asked. So you have to come up with a brand new question every single time. And it can't be, what is 1? What is 2? What is 3? It's got to be a different form of a different question. So, yes?
What is Jeopardy?
What is Jeopardy is a great question. All right. So, I will say, Jeff, do shoes smell like onions?
Always.
Oh, you're out.
What?
Don't answer the question. We'll start over. All right. So, do not answer the question. All you do is throw the ball along. And it's about keeping it in the air as long as possible, as fast as possible. Teppo, why does your hair smell like lilacs? 3, 2, 1.
Why are shoes green?
Why are onions purple? Why do fish live in? What am I? Am I dying? How do you make mustard?
You're out! Sit down!
It wasn't Travis.
What is life?
I'm sad.
That's not a question! Sit down! No, it's not. Sit down. In the form of a question.
Am I sad?
That would have been a great question, but you didn't ask that question. 3, 2.
What is hummus made of? That was a good
Why is my
throw.
hair red?
a great question.
What are colors?
Why do frogs regurgitate their stomachs? What?
What?
Wait, what?
What'd you ask?
I said, what is death?
Oh, okay.
That's fire.
Why do people believe God?
Oh.
That was landed on my.
No, you're good. Keep going.
How are footballs made?
What are video games?
There's no one there. Sit down. Travis, right?
Hi.
Okay, cool.
That's fine.
Nice to meet you, Travis. Sit down. Pass it away, Lorelai. You're out of the. Oh, you're still in this game?
No.
No, yeah. Pass it away. Give it to someone else.
Why does my hair look like this?
What is Jeopardy?
Wait, wasn't that already asked?
That was not asked during the actual game.
Why is this game so bad?
Where? Oh my gosh. Why is the sky blue?
What are chips made out of?
How?
Why do we wear socks? Why is grass green?
No.
Jeff, is the tree wet the bed? If it's not true, don't answer. Sit down.
That was already a question.
Exactly.
Why are there hats?
Oh,
Because it keeps the air in. Why did you die like that? Who, what, where, and why?
wait. What's already been asked? Sit down.
Hey, all of them have not been asked.
Oh, gray area. Keep going. Keep going. Say what? I love it.
Why is hair curly? Why are there sandals? Why are people scared of potatoes?
Oh, it's just going for you, Zach.
Don't kill them.
Can I say that?
Yeah. Yeah, sure.
Why is the color red?
Why do we go to school? Why do we breathe?
What a fish doll.
Why are cats scared of cucumbers?
It's a very good question.
Why are we throwing this basketball? That's a good question. It's the perfect question. Air.
All right. Good job. You're out. That's not a question. Air is not a question. Sit down. We're done now. Good job. Give your round of applause. That's Jeopardy. I said give a round of applause. Overly unnecessary applause is a thing. Get used to it. All right. Lake, will you do the honors and start our wonderful, delicious live stream? If you don't know, every single week we also stream out the 11 o'clock service to our YouTube. So like, subscribe, smash that button. You know how it works. I know. I hate it. I hate it so much. It was the worst. Yeah. Yeah. Red rum, because it's backwards. I get it. Yeah. All right. Scarlett, can I get you to move around? Because I'm pretty sure you're like legit just in the blocking the camera right now. So, hello everybody. It is great. That's not where the camera is. It is great to see you all here today, and we're starting a brand new series called Mountain Movers, and we have a cool bumper video this time.
This is just sad.
What? Okay, it's a bumper video. Truth. All right, Mountain Movers. Did you guys like that? Did you get really fun?
Why did you have a virus at the end? Is that TV corrupted by
Yes.
coronavirus?
Yes, exactly.
I'll subscribe.
All right. So if you don't know me, one of the things that I do on a thank you. A regular business, is I do something called historical fencing, which is basically sword fighting. Now, maybe you're like familiar with, or maybe you're like, it's not like LARPing? No, it's not, but that's beside the point. What's interesting, so basically the way that it works is, like most other martial arts, if you've anyone ever done karate, or like taekwondo, or judo, or aikido, or any form of martial arts before? Okay. Some of it, or if you're like, I really want to. So a lot of martial arts come from like the eastern part of the world, And what the historical fact is, it is Western martial arts. So it's like the people who are fighting in the 15th, 16th century, how to fight with a longsword, or like Avatar, or something like that. And they were masters at that time who basically had classes and taught at different like schools of how to fight a certain way. And so these people would then write those things. Now in the last like 10, 15 years, people have been getting those older documents and learning how they apply or how to use them today to fight. And that's what we do. But what's interesting is one of my favorite things about sword fighting is sword fighting. Is actually hitting people with a sword. Like that's the best part of it, right? Like you don't want to like look at swords. You want to actually take one, pick one up and hit someone with it. What's interesting is that there is a group of individuals, like I've seen this in every single club throughout this, like when I've gone to different ones. Are you looking to see if it's working? It might be. Okay, cool. All right, sweet. So what's interesting is there are people that are in these groups that all they do is read these books about how to sword fight, and then when it comes to actually sword fighting, they don't do it. And like at that point, do you really call yourself a sword fighter? But they're just sitting there, like they get all the gear on, they stand there, but then they just like read their books and talk about it for a while. And I'm like, what are you doing? Because that's not the same thing. It's like a football player who learns how to play football, who learns everything about it, but then never actually gets out on the field and plays football. Is that person actually a football player?
Yes. No.
If they've never physically played football before.
If they got hired, if they're stuck on the bench.
Do you think they feel good about being called a football player at that point if they've never ever actually played the game? Or like you there's lots of different scenarios where that like thing kind of makes sense. I mean, I guess we're okay for the most part. Cool, sweet. We see video gamers do that all the time, right? Like people comment on it, like do commentary on games, but maybe actually not play the game, but they have some basis of it or understanding of it. Same thing with like football announcers and commentators and stuff. But at the end of the day, there's certain professions and certain places where we don't want that to be the case. For example, if I'm going to have heart surgery, I don't want a doctor who has never actually performed heart surgery, right? Like if you're going in and like this person's never ever done anything, or they've been trained by a doctor who's never even touched a living, that's not the type of like heart surgeon I want. Or if you're on a plane and the captain comes on, he's like, "Welcome people to today's flight. I am Captain Joe, and today's my first flight. I read a lot of books on how to do this, and now we're in the air. You guys are all good. Don't worry, you're in safe hands." Who's jumping off that plane right then with a parachute and getting out? Because you're probably not landing.
What if the face is fear of dying alone?
Okay. Wow. But there are certain situations where we don't want that to be the case. We want people who are practiced in their profession. We want people who have hands-on experience in their profession. We want people who have like life experience with it and not just yes.
What if it's their first time and you don't do that, and then they die, and then it's their first time and you don't want to do it? How are they?
You asking how do people have a first time flying if they've never had a first one? Yeah, like that's yes, but there are practice ways. You're not going to fly a group of like 150 people on a passenger plane if you've never flown a plane before. There's many simulators and stuff you do ahead of time. Now, there's obviously always a first time, but they're usually not in the pilot seat. Yes, there's a lot of questions about this specific analogy. I understand. Yeah.
May I say something?
Yeah.
I'm actually pretty good at playing video games because I'm not joking. I have an Xbox 360. I played about 50-something different games on there.
Sweet, dude. Awesome. I love playing video games too. Hero likes to play video games. Yeah? Sweet. And 360, old school.
Can't wait to watch this video and see random redhead.
Random redhead. Are you going to go back and watch this? Sweet. Awesome. Cool. Okay, so what we're talking about in this series and what we're talking about today when it comes to this idea is talking about faith. We're talking about our faith and trying to talk about how faith doesn't have to be this big, ambiguous, ooh, faith, and it's like, just kind of like those memes where like all the numbers are going, I was like, I don't understand. What is it? It doesn't have to be that crazy, mystifying thing. We're talking about faith today, though, that is practical, hands-on, like that life experience faith that we have. We'll have time for questions at the end for sure. So as we get going today, what we want to do is look at our in thinking about that, same thing. It's like we don't want people who just talk about faith and study about faith, but who actively live out what it means to have faith. In this series, we're going to be looking at a specific verse that comes from Matthew, verse 17, verse 20. If you have Bibles with you, you can open it up to that passage. Otherwise, it is on the very bottom of those talk notes in front of you, and it says this. You can read along on the screen. It says, Jesus is speaking to his disciples about faith, and he's saying, I tell you, if you had faith even as small as a mustard seed, you could say mountain, move from here to there, and it would move. Nothing would be impossible. Jesus is speaking hyperbolically a little bit, because like we didn't just see a bunch of, back in the New Testament, a bunch of disciples like just move, and like the whole landscape of the old ancient days changing. No, like he's speaking metaphorically, because what he's doing is he's helping them understand that even the smallest amount of faith lived out practically can make a difference and can move mountains. Have you ever seen a mustard seed? These things are absolutely tiny. Like, they are so minuscule. Maybe you have one in front of you. I have some for you if you don't have them. They come in fun little baggies that don't look like anything else that's weird. Don't worry about it. Just take those with you. Yeah. That is exactly what those are seeds that are planted to make mustard plants, which then their flowers are ground into mustard. That's how you get. Yes. Yes, it's an herb spice that flowers, and those flowers are ground down to mustard. Yeah. Well, it's a plant, like a. No. Except for the trees that grow the Dijon jars, those are really big trees. Never mind. Yeah, grateful fun. We'll have it at the end. So, what Jesus is trying to help us understand is that even with the smallest amount of faith, even with the smallest kernel of faith that is lived out practically, we can make mountains move. We can move mountains. And mountains look like so many different things in our lives. The big challenges that we're facing, the obstacles we're facing. My wife, if you heard me on the platform talking about it, our son, Arthur, was born with a cyst in his brain, this huge mountain that we had no way to control. And our faith, our trust in God, has been what's keeping us moving forward. And we've seen God work in amazing ways. But sometimes mountains are even bigger, or we don't feel like we understand how God is working in the midst of that. But that is where this idea of faith lived out practically is such an important piece. And faith is not just a bunch of Bible knowledge, a bunch of headcanon. It is practical, in the trenches, unequivocal faith. And this is faith that produces fruit. This is faith that makes a difference. This is faith that changes our own lives and changes the lives of others. I'll have time for questions. Hold on to that question. Write it down so you don't forget it. It
actually works right
here. Okay, go for it.
If it's not a head cannon, is it a glass cannon?
Okay, I get where you're going with that. Thank you, but if it's I'd like it to be a question that happily adds to what we're talking about. It's funny. I love it, but kind of distracting at the moment. Faith doesn't just happen, though. And that's the thing when it comes down to. Faith doesn't just happen. Faith is something that is developed over time. It is something that is worked at over and over and over again. But it is important because faith has the potential to change lives. And every time that we take a step in expressing our faith and walking it out, like what we read in the Bible and how God is prompting us to do it, that is when we see Jesus, people see Jesus through us and us walking out and growing in our faith. One of the writers in the New Testament name was James, and we're going to read a little bit of what he says today. And it's in James chapter 2, verse 26. And James is like the half-brother of Jesus. So he's a guy that walked with Jesus for a really long time. Anyone have siblings here? And you're like, woo, my sibling is claiming to be God. I totally believe everything he has to say, right? Yeah, no, James probably had a lot of hesitation about his brother, being wait, no. But then he sees his brother die and get resurrected, and he's like, oh, everything that you've been teaching and telling us is true. And so then he goes and writes this letter. The New Testament is full of letters to the different churches that were around that time, and James wrote this letter, which is referred to as the book of wisdom in the New Testament. If you've heard of Proverbs before, Proverbs the Old Testament wisdom, James is the New Testament wisdom. So it's very practical tidbits of things that we can take and learn from. And this is what James says about faith. He says, just as the body is without breath, so also faith is, and read this part with me, dead without good works. Say that again. Dead without good works. Say it again. Dead without good works. Thank you. Online needs to hear you. You're not picking up unless you're yelling at me.
We're streaming.
Yeah, we're streaming.
Where's the camera?
Right there.
There's a reason I'm here.
Yeah. So what does it mean, good works? What does that mean? Shout it out. What is good? Faith is dead without good works. What is James getting at? What are good works?
Good works.
Okay, define it another way. Yeah.
The stuff that he does.
The stuff that he does? Okay. The stuff that we do?
Jesus.
Because this isn't just Jesus. This is a challenge to us. Works.
Facing its challenges.
I have a question.
Yes.
But I don't understand the fact that it says faith is dead without good works, because good works don't really matter.
So there's a difference between salvation and faith through works and our faith leading to good works. An expression of faith is good works. It doesn't lead us to faith or lead us to salvation, which is what because you're referencing Paul when he says like there's no amount of good works that can get us to God, which is true. But Paul is specifically talking about salvation and about earning right standing with God, where James is talking about, okay, you have faith and you have a relationship with God. This is what a live and active faith looks like, is good works. Is that, I see you're still confused. What is,
I'm just thinking, is it a way of displaying how, I don't know, what our faith is? Like,
Yeah.
how we need to act more like Jesus, even though we'll never get there, we're just doing what he would do?
yeah, doing what he would do? That, and I think that's like the crux of it, right? Is good works is living as Jesus would live, doing good for the benefit of others, living in obedience to God. Good works is doing the things that you know are right, doing the things that are ethically and morally accurate, and going out of our way to do those things for other people. And so that's really what it comes down to today. The one thing, if you don't take anything else away from today, take this. It is the one thing that we're learning today. Faith is trusting God enough to serve others. It's on your talk notes. You can circle it at the very top, but go ahead and repeat that with me. Faith is trusting God enough to serve others. And that is what we're learning today, is that idea of a practical way that we live out our faith is by trusting God enough to serve others, to go out of our way, to pour into the life of other people, to live as Jesus lived, to recognize that it's not just about head knowledge and knowing all of these things, but it is about putting that faith into practice, and by doing that through serving others. And not for any gain, not for any personal satisfaction, but solely because it is a way that we develop our faith and it is the right thing to do. So we're going to look at a story in the New Testament that Jesus tells. It's called the parable of the Good Samaritan. Anyone ever heard it before? You ever heard the term a Good Samaritan, right? Like, and it's, if you didn't know, it comes from the Bible, which we'll get to a little bit of the context in a second. But it's found in Luke chapter 10. We hear the word Good Samaritan. We hear about someone who's like, someone who is a helper of others. Like the Good Samaritan held the door for that person, or the Good Samaritan stopped on the side of the road and helped me change a tire, kind of thing. If you have your Life Transformation Bible, the youth one, it is in page 792. If you don't have one of these and you would like a Bible to take home with you, we have plenty of them for you. There's some up here. There's a lot more back in the back. Jeff, will you get Travis one? And then anyone else? Oh, you don't want?
I was actually going to ask if I could go to the bathroom.
You do not need to ask to go to the bathroom. Just do it quietly and politely, and it's right next door. What's that? 792. Yep. All right, so starting in verse 30, this is how it starts. Jesus replied with a story. A Jewish man was traveling from Jerusalem down to Jericho, and he was attacked by bandits. And I'm going to continue on in here and read. I'm going to pause and read as I go, okay? He was attacked by bandits. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him up, and left him half dead beside the road. By chance, a priest came along, but when he saw the man lying there, he crossed to the other side of the road and passed him by. Immediately, we're like, what? Like, there's this guy dying on the ground, and this guy, a priest, a religious leader, passes him by. A temple assistant walked up, looked at him lying there, but he also passed on by on the other side. Now we're left with this in the moment of like, okay, well, is there a reason? Like, they felt justified in their action. What the situation was is like, to be a priest or a temple assistant at that time, to go into the temple, you had to be ritually clean, like from a cleanse, purity sort of things. There were lots of different rituals you had to go through at cleaning and washing to be considered. And what they were worried about was that this man was dead on the ground, and if they touched him, they would be considered unclean, and they would have to go through all of that over again. So immediately we're left like, wait, so they just like didn't want to like wash their hands again? Essentially. Like they couldn't be inconvenienced enough to stop and check on this man, because in their mind was, well, I'm very important. I have a place to be. I can't be bothered with this distraction right now. I've got to go, because this could be a whole thing. We're like looking at that and we're like, well, there's a guy like dying on the side of the road. Like, you got to go and stop and like check in on them. But we make all those same kind of like decisions in our lives, whether we realize it or not. Anyone here drive yet? And you're driving, or you're driving with your parents or something, and like you see somebody on the side of the road, and it's like, oh, maybe they're pushing their car through, and you're like, I could stop, but it's 110 out right now, or I've got to get to this next place really quickly, and we pass right on by. And we're not trying to condemn you in this time. We all do it. It's like, it's a part, but it's those minor inconveniences of serving others. See, like, they didn't have that trust in God to serve others. Like, faith is trusting God enough to serve others. And so they were immediately, like, we see, like, okay, guys, what are you doing? And this is where it gets really good. It says, then a despised Samaritan came along, and when he saw the man, he felt compassion for him. Now, anyone know why that sentence is so important? A despised Samaritan. Anyone know? If you know, you can raise your hand, shout out the answer. Yes.
People didn't like the Samaritans.
People didn't like the Samaritans. Yeah. So that's it. The Samaritans, by the Jewish people, were considered less than human. Like, let that sink in for a second. A whole people group, a whole ethnicity, they considered less than human. And this goes back generations and generations and generations, because Samaritans were like half Jewish and half Assyrian, essentially, which is another like ethnicity in the ancient Near East. And so back when at one point one guy married another person, ended up having his family tree and family line that was different. And it was at that point that the Jewish people were like, you are no longer clean and considered, and so we don't treat you as human, we despise you. And then that one relationship there built onto another, and so carried on generations, so much so that now in Jesus' time, when he's there, people, when they hear Samaritans, when they see Samaritans, like, it was like, no, you do not go over there. It is like forbidden. Like, those people are the worst. Like, those people are not even people, kind of thing. That's what they thought about them. So immediately take that weight into the parable that's happening here, right? The Jewish priest, who's supposed to be godly and righteous and the reflection of who God is, passes this man by. The temple assistant, it passes this guy's by. And this person who is considered scum, despised, stops, and he shows compassion. And look what he does. He says, going over to him, the Samaritan soothed his wounds with olive oil and wine and bandaged them. Then he put the man on his own donkey and took him to an inn, where he took care of him. The next day he handed the innkeeper 2 silver coins, which is tantamount to like a few weeks' wages, telling him, take care of this man. If his bill runs higher than this, I'll pay you the next time I'm here. So he shows immense compassion for him. He doesn't just stop at like, hey, you okay? Okay, cool, see you later. He stops. He bandages him. He soothes his wound. He puts him on his donkey. He carries him all the way to the inn. He pays the innkeeper. He's like, hey, this guy's on my tab. If this goes above what I've already paid you, I will come back and I'll make it even. I'm putting everything I can into this guy, making sure he gets out of here safely. And now Jesus asks the question to the person that he was responding to. And he says, now which of these 3 would you say was the neighbor to the man who was attacked by bandits? Jesus asked. The man replied, the one who showed him mercy. And Jesus said, and this is where it comes right to us, yes, now, and go do the same. Yes, now go and do the same. We're challenged that what is expressed in the story of the Good Samaritan is how we should be living our lives, where our faith is not just something that's book knowledge, not just like, oh, you just have to have faith and everything will be okay. No, it is about a faith that moves and acts and changes lives and is served others. Faith is trusting God enough to what? Serve others. Thank you for the few of you guys. Faith is trusting God enough to what? Serve others. All right. So there's two practical things that we're going to take away from here. If you have big notes on there, I think there's two different types of talk notes too. Some of you might have blanks to fill in. Some of you might not. This is the two blanks. So these are two things we're going to be taking away from this today, from this passage, as well as another section of James. The first one is to take time to listen well. When it comes to living out this practical step of serving others in faith, we have to take time to listen well. And this is important because there's a lot of needs that are met in the wrong way because someone doesn't take the time to listen well. Over the last couple years, when we've talked about the racial riots that are coming, so much of what people are asking for is just, hey, listen, hear us out, hear what we're experiencing, and then let's move forward. And too many times there is just this ideas like, oh, I know what you need, and it's like, no, the Good Samaritan, what did he do? He stopped. He looked over the man. He tended to his wounds. He said, okay, here you go. You need this, and you need this, and you just take time to listen well. You have friends that are experiencing hardships. Maybe you have friends who have big challenges and obstacles, and a way that you can serve them and that you can have, you can show them faith is simply by being there to listen to them, to be that person that they can say, you know what? Yeah, I am going through a lot right now. This is what it is. A lot of the times, people want to talk to people. They just don't know how to open up, and they don't know how to start that conversation. A way to practically live out our faith is simply to be that voice, that ear to hear. Not trying to fix the problems, not trying to solve everything for them, but just simply listening and stopping. We all have mountains that we're facing. Some of them are bigger than others, and I don't know what mountain or obstacle you may have going on in your own life, whether it is family issues, whether it is emotional things, whether it's mental health, anxiety, depression, all of those things. There are mountains that are in our lives, and if we have people who will listen well to us, it changes dramatically how we could be handling those situations. A lot of the times, too, it's just listening to others, but it's also listening to ourselves well and taking the time. Maybe what you're experiencing feels very ambiguous. You're like, I don't know what I'm going through right now, or what I'm I don't know what's going to help myself in this situation. And instead of retreating and trying to avoid the problem, listening to yourself, reflecting on it, writing down, journaling, taking time to just listen well and say, okay, what are some ways that I can invite God into this and help myself in this and to work through and move, to have faith that God is in the midst of this mountain with me. And sometimes God speaks to us, and through prayer and through reading our Bibles, even through other people, if we're not actively listening and saying, okay, God, what are you trying to tell me in this time? What are you trying to tell me in this season of my life right now where I have this mountain that doesn't seem like it's moving? Listening well to God in that time helps to give us a path to walk towards moving that mountain, and we can build our faith around that. And the second piece is this: respond with compassion. And we see this lived out exactly with the Good Samaritan. He didn't respond with we don't know what the ethnicity of the man on the ground was. The Samaritan, I'm sure Jesus probably would have said a Samaritan was on as well. So we have to assume that this was an Israelite. This was a Jewish man. And the fact that this despised Samaritan, knowing full well how people feel about him, is on this path and says, I'm going to still show compassion to this person who is essentially my enemy. I'm going to show compassion to this person who, by all accounts, probably hates me. We respond with compassion, and not out of a desire to make things have things go our way, not out of a desire to check a box or anything, but simply because it is out of a nature of our hearts to respond with love and compassion. In the book of James, another thing that he writes here, and I love reading this passage. So snarky the way that he says this. He says, "Suppose you see a brother or sister who has no food or clothing, and you say, goodbye and have a good day, stay warm and eat well. But then you don't give that person any food or clothing. What does it say? What good does that do? So you see, faith by itself isn't enough. Unless it produces good deeds, it is," what does James say? "Dead and useless." Dead and useless. That's the type of faith James all we do is talk about faith. All we do is send a nod in the general direction. Like, yeah, I know, you're in trouble. And like, it's that sitting at a car, like a stop sign at like an intersection, and there's a person asking for help, like maybe it's food or money or something, and you're sitting there and you've got like 10 bags of chicken nuggets. I don't know, you've got a bunch of food and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go chow down on all this food. And you're like, okay, I guess I could give him something. Like us waving and saying, hey, I hope everything's good. Or even just not even stopping to pray and helping that person feel like a human being. Or if we have a friend that's like, man, like, oh, I'm struggling right now. Life is really hard. My parents are super mad at me for something, and I don't even know how I'm going to get through the day. You're like, man, all right, have fun with that. And you just walk away. Like, is that a friend you want? Is that a response you want? Is that compassionate in any way? A compassion is saying in that moment, like, man, you want to talk about it? I'm here for you. I'm sorry. I'll pray for you. I don't know how to help you right now, but if you just need someone to talk to, I'm here. Responding with compassion can go such a long way. And responding with compassion is how we serve others in a way that is reflective of who Jesus is. And yes, there are absolutely times and places where we can respond properly, but a lot of time it's more about just doing something and not just instead of doing nothing. So when we get to this idea of the Good Samaritan, the priest, the temple assistant could have done a lot of different things on that path. They could have sent for help. They could have walked up the path to Jerusalem and sent someone back down, even just to about it, instead of just walking by and not doing anything. So in our own lives, we have to strive to say, I want to be like that Good Samaritan. I want to live a life that faith is not just something I read about and I talk about, but it is something that I apply. And so over these next 3 weeks of this series, and we lead into Easter, we're talking about very easy ways to apply this. And so this week is simply, faith is trusting God enough to serve others. Say it with me one more time, everyone. Faith is trusting God enough to serve others. It goes back to what Jesus faith as small as a mustard seed. We all have this starting place when it comes to faith. And maybe you've been walking in your faith for a really long time and developing your faith and growing your faith. You're like, okay, I want to really get down in the trenches and start getting a faith that is greater than it's ever been before, that type of faith that can move mountains. Or you're here and you're like, I don't even know about this faith. I'm just starting this faith journey. Either way, every single one of us can take a step. All it starts with is faith as small as a mustard seed. So on your way out today, make sure to grab these. But I'm going to pray over you guys, and then we are going to wrap up for the day. So Jesus, we are so thankful for the opportunity to be here, to talk about faith, to be able to even worship you freely in a place like this, God. We pray that throughout this week, throughout the rest of today, that you would help us to see the small steps that we can make. That you'd help us to develop a faith that is lasting, that is long-lasting, that isn't something that is based off of whatever we don't know, but is based off of a surety and a confidence that you are in our lives and you are working. God, you say that it is impossible to please you without faith. And so we just ask that this week we would begin to build our faith. And then from that, the outpouring of serving others and the works that become part of our lives, the reflection of who Jesus is in our lives. If you're here and you've never made the decision to follow Jesus, you can pray along with me right now, right here. You say, Jesus, I've made mistakes.